What kind of man are you if you can't even control your wife? Rick leaned against the bar counter, his smile sardonic. He wore a crisp shirt with his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing a gold watch. The bar was dimly lit, but his smile was bright, like a knife. The sound swept through the air and hit me in the ear. A few colleagues around me laughed, and someone whispered. I stood at the door with a packed takeaway in my hand. I crumpled the paper bag. At that moment, all eyes were on me. She, my wife Anna, sat beside Rick. She was down on her head, still holding a glass of wine. The hand that once held me is now on the table beside him. Rick shook his glass lazily. Come on, man, have a drink. Celebrate your wife finding someone richer than you. There was another burst of laughter. I didn't move. The laughter came back and forth in my head like a thunderclap. I stared at her. She looked up at me, and there was panic, and a little cowardice, in her eyes. She did not get up or explain. That night was the beginning of my divorce. When she got home, she pretended nothing had happened. She changed into a home suit and said, "You came back early today." The tone was as natural as talking about the weather. I walked into the kitchen and put the takeaway on the table. Rick's really good at looking after people, I said. That remark was like a knife. Her hand stopped and the foundation smeared on her face. You heard wrong, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't say anything more. The room was so quiet that the hum of the refrigerator was piercing. I turned to leave and she reached for the phone. Don/T move. I walked over and my phone fell to the floor with the screen still on. Only one line of text above. I can't forget you that night. Her face was pale as paper. That was a long time ago, I was. I interrupted her, are you crying because you regret it, or because I caught you? Her tears fell at that moment. I turned back to the living room. That night, she slept in the bedroom and I slept on the couch. It rained all night outside the window. Like someone outside counting down the last seconds of our marriage. The next morning, I sat by the window at dawn. The phone was on the table, its screen facing the morning light. I called the lawyer. I want a divorce. He was silent for 2 seconds. Why? She cheated. Her partner was my boss. After a moment's thought, I added, maybe there is something else to do. It was quiet the day she moved out. She didn't take much with her, just her red high heels. There were only a few old clothes and a photo left in the living room. She leaned against Rick, her smile bright and cheerful. I have seen that smile, but it has never belonged to me. I shoved the photo to the bottom of the drawer. My fingers are still shaking, but my heart is cold. I became the most talked about person in the company. Someone whispered in the tea room, his wife ran off with his boss. I heard the man got a promotion. What a shame, a man who can't even control his own house. I pretended not to hear. Work during the day and work overtime at night. They put all the work that no one else wanted to do on me, and I did it. Once Rick passed by and saw me still organizing files. He patted me on the shoulder and said with a smile, it's good to be professional, but sometimes it's too late. I smiled and didn't look up. Because at that moment, I began to take notes on every project. He thought I was working hard. I was actually keeping track of his greed, his flaws, every single signature. 3 months later, the company was preparing to lay off workers. At the meeting, Rick announced, we need to cut costs. His eyes stayed on me for 2 seconds, meaningfully. I understand that he did it on purpose. I was cleaning the table that day when he came over. You can get by anywhere with an employee like you. I looked up and said, thank you. But, he leaned in, some people are destined to work under others their whole lives. I smiled. At that moment, I made up my mind that I would not tolerate it any longer. It was overcast the day I left. It was so windy it was like it was going to lift the whole building. I didn't look back. Rick stood at the doorway, a triumphant smile playing on his lips. Good luck, he said. I replied, good luck won't go to waste on you. I went to the suburbs. I visit clients during the day and read project documents at night. I was staying in an old hotel with damp walls and a musty smell of bed sheets. I filled the table with scrap paper and notes. I used the phone's light to compare the land data inch by inch. A project file abandoned by the company. It showed me a piece of land they had missed. The middle ground between two municipal roads. I looked at the files for 3 days. No one registered. No one wanted it. I know this is the breakthrough. I went to the bank for a loan and put up almost all my savings. A few months later, the land was in my name. I founded a small company named Northbridge Development. Those are the names they dropped. I use that name, just so they'll feel cold when they see it. I started as a small builder, signing contracts, running approvals, negotiating with suppliers. Drive 30 kilometers during the day to do business. I wrote a report on the desk at night. I don't have a secretary or a team. I only have an old friend who helps me keep the books. But I knew in my heart that every step was a step back toward those people. A year later, Rick's company secured a municipal expansion project. I laughed when I saw the news. Because I know the route of the project will pass right through my land. I didn't say anything, I didn't do anything. Just wait. A few months later, they sent someone to talk to them. Rick didn't show up. It was his assistant. Our company wants to buy your land. Make an offer. I asked casually, did Rick send you? The man was stunned for a moment and laughed, it's just business. I said with a smile, yeah, it's just business. The offer fell apart and they left quickly. A week later, I got a call from Rick. His tone was calm, but there was a hint of anger. We need to talk. Tonight at 8, the usual place. I went. Same bar, same seat. But this time, he didn't drink a drop of the wine he ordered. You really think that buying that piece of land will stop my project? He said with a laugh, but his hands were shaking. I didn't answer. I pushed the briefcase in front of him. He opened it and saw land contracts, municipal approvals, a lawyer's letter and copies of receipts. The face went from red to white to gray. Rick, I leaned back in the chair, my tone calm. This is private land, not part of the municipal development. Every penny you invested went into an account I set up. He stared at the pages, his Adam's apple rolling up and down. You already know. Since the day you laughed at me. At that moment, his finger trembled. Wine spilled from the table and splattered on his trousers. He frantically wiped it, as if he had been drained of air. A few days later, a company meeting. I appear as a partner. Rick sat across the table, pale-faced. He tried to act as if nothing had happened. But the pen in my hand slipped down several times. Nice to meet you again, I said. He gritted his teeth. What do you want? I smiled. I don't want anything. I just want you to remember who I am. The conference room was silent. Even the sound of breathing in the air became heavy. Rick's eyes flickered like those of a beast cornered. I could see the tremor in his eyes. 2 months later, Rick's project collapsed. The capital chain broke and the company conducted an internal audit. He was demoted, suspended and eventually forced to leave. They say he drinks all day and curses my name. Others say he plans to start over in another city. I'm not interested in knowing. I dug up that photo. She leaned against him and smiled. I looked at it for a while and laughed. Laughing at how naive I was. The fate of the son finally learned to fight back. I tore the photo in half and threw it into the fireplace. The fire was blinding, and the smile was turning to ash. The flame flickered, like the wine in his hand that day. She wrote me a letter saying she had dreamed of me leaving. She said she woke up crying and said she regretted not letting go of her pride sooner. I didn't reply. Just watching the letter slowly being consumed by the fire. I smiled. The person in my dream is not me anymore.